The crack of her bare feet against frozen earth echoed through the December night as she ran, her breath coming in ragged gasps that turned to white clouds in the frigid air. Rebecca Walsh had never imagined she would be fleeing through the snowy streets of Bandera, Texas, in nothing but her thin cotton nightgown, the fabric doing nothing to shield her from the bitter cold that gripped the small frontier town in the winter of 1883. Behind her, she could hear Marcus's voice, slurred with whiskey and filled with rage, shouting threats that made her blood run even colder than the snow beneath her bleeding feet. She had endured his temper for 3 months since arriving in Texas as his mail-order bride, but tonight something in his eyes had warned her that if she stayed, she might not see morning. Rebecca stumbled over a root hidden beneath the thin layer of snow, catching herself against a wooden fence post before pushing forward. Her lungs burned, and her feet had gone from painful to numbingly cold. The main street of Bandera stretched before her, dark except for the warm glow from the saloon windows up ahead. Most decent folk were already asleep at this hour, and she knew better than to expect help from the men drinking inside those establishments. A woman running from her husband, even one as cruel as Marcus, was considered a private matter in these parts. "You get back here, Rebecca." Marcus's voice came closer, and she risked a glance over her shoulder to see his hulking form silhouetted against the lamplight from their small house at the edge of town. He was gaining on her, his longer strides eating up the distance despite his intoxication. Fear gave her legs new strength, and she pushed herself harder, even as she felt the warm trickle of blood from where rocks and ice had cut into her bare soles. She rounded the corner near the mercantile, her nightgown catching on a barrel and tearing. The sound of fabric ripping seemed impossibly loud in the quiet night. Where could she go? Who would help her? Marcus worked at the lumber mill and was well liked among the men in town. She was just the quiet wife from back east, the girl from Pennsylvania who had answered his advertisement seeking a bride. Nobody really knew her, and she had no family here, no friends to turn to. The sound of hoofbeats made her freeze for just a moment. A rider was coming down the street from the opposite direction, his horse moving at a steady walk. Rebecca's heart hammered in her chest as she tried to decide whether to hide or to risk calling out for help. Before she could make up her mind, Marcus rounded the corner behind her. "There you are, you ungrateful wretch!" He lunged forward, his hand reaching for her arm. Rebecca let out a cry and tried to dodge, but her numb feet betrayed her and she slipped on a patch of ice. She was going down, and Marcus was right there, his face twisted with fury. Then suddenly, the rider was between them, his horse cutting Marcus off as the man pulled his mount to a sharp stop. "Get behind me," the stranger said, his voice calm but carrying an unmistakable note of command. He sat tall in his saddle, his dark coat dusted with snow, his hat pulled low against the wind. Even in the dim light, Rebecca could see the set of his jaw and the way his hand rested casually but deliberately near the pistol at his hip. Rebecca scrambled backward, her legs shaking so badly she could barely stand. She moved behind the horse, gripping her torn nightgown around herself as she watched Marcus pull up short. "This is none of your concern, stranger," Marcus spat, his words slurring together. "That's my wife, and she needs to come home right now." The cowboy shifted in his saddle, and Rebecca noticed how young he was, probably not much older than her own 22 years. But there was something in the way he carried himself, a quiet confidence that made Marcus hesitate despite his rage and the whiskey courage in his veins. "I don't make it a habit to watch men chase barefoot women through the snow," the stranger replied. His voice had a slight drawl, marking him as someone who had spent time further south, maybe in the heart of Texas cattle country. Seems to me like the lady doesn't want to go with you. The lady is my wife, and what happens between a man and his wife is his own business, Marcus growled, taking a step forward. Now move aside before I move you. The cowboy's horse, a sturdy roan gelding, stood rock-solid beneath him. The stranger made no move to dismount, but Rebecca saw his posture change ever so slightly, becoming even more alert. Can't do that. Why don't you head on home and sleep off whatever's got you so riled up? Things might look different in the morning light. I said move. Marcus roared, reaching for the rider's leg. What happened next occurred so fast that Rebecca almost missed it. The cowboy's hand moved to his pistol, drew it smoothly from its holster, and leveled it at Marcus before the drunk man could complete his grab. The click of the hammer being pulled back seemed to echo off the wooden building surrounding them. I don't want to shoot you, the stranger said quietly, and Rebecca believed him. There was no anger in his voice, no excitement, just a simple statement of fact. But I will if you try that again. Now, I'm going to ask you one more time to go on home. Sleep it off. Whatever's between you and this lady can be sorted out tomorrow when you're thinking clearer. Marcus stared up at the gun, his bloodshot eyes showing the first hint of uncertainty. His hands clenched and unclenched at his sides, and for a terrible moment, Rebecca thought he might actually rush forward despite the weapon pointed at his chest. Then, slowly, he took a step backward. This isn't over, Marcus said, his gaze sliding past the cowboy to lock onto Rebecca. She's my wife. You can't keep her from me. Maybe not, the stranger agreed, but tonight she's staying somewhere safe. You go on now. They stood frozen in tableau for several heartbeats, the only sound the soft whisper of snow beginning to fall more heavily. Finally, Marcus turned and stalked away, though not without several backward glances. Rebecca watched him go, her entire body trembling now that the immediate danger had passed. The cold was seeping deep into her bones, and her feet were almost completely numb. The cowboy waited until Marcus had disappeared around the corner before holstering his pistol and swinging down from his saddle. He was tall, Rebecca noticed, with broad shoulders beneath his coat. When he turned to face her, she got her first clear look at his face. Strong features, clean-shaven, with eyes that looked almost black in the darkness. There was something kind in those eyes despite the hardness she had just witnessed. "Are you hurt, madam?" he asked, his voice gentler now. Rebecca opened her mouth to answer, but the words caught in her throat. Now that the terror was ebbing, the cold and exhaustion rushed in to fill the void. Her knees buckled, and she would have fallen if the stranger had not caught her arm, steadying her with surprising gentleness. "Easy now," he said. "You're half frozen. We need to get you inside somewhere warm." He shrugged out of his heavy coat and draped it over her shoulders. The weight of it and the lingering warmth from his body felt like heaven against her frozen skin. "I don't have anywhere to go," Rebecca managed through chattering teeth. "I can't go back there, I can't." "I understand," he said, and something in his tone made her believe he truly did. "There's a boarding house just up the street. Mrs. Patterson runs it. She's a decent woman. We'll get you there." Rebecca tried to take a step and gasped as pain shot through her feet. Looking down, she saw the dark stains in the snow where she had been standing, blood from the cuts and scrapes she had accumulated during her desperate flight. The stranger followed her gaze and his jaw tightened. "With your permission, madam, I'm going to lift you up onto my horse," he said. "You can't walk on those feet." Too exhausted and cold to protest, Rebecca nodded. He moved with careful deliberation, making sure she was secure before gathering up his reins and beginning to lead the horse down the street. She sat side saddle, clutching his coat around herself, watching this unexpected savior as he walked beside his mount. "What's your name?" she asked after a moment. He glanced up at her, and even in the darkness she thought she saw a hint of a smile. Isaac, Isaac Garrett. Most folks just call me Isaac, though. I'm Rebecca, Rebecca Walsh. She paused, then added quietly, Thank you, Isaac, if you hadn't come along when you did. No need for thanks, Isaac replied. Any decent man would have done the same, but Rebecca knew that was not true. She had seen plenty of men in Bandera turn a blind eye to things that made them uncomfortable. Domestic troubles were considered private matters, and strangers were expected to mind their own business. Isaac Garrett could have easily ridden past, pretending not to see or hear what was happening. Instead, he had put himself between her and danger without hesitation. They reached the boarding house, a two-story structure with a welcoming porch and warm light glowing in the downstairs windows. Isaac tied his horse to the post and then helped Rebecca down, supporting her weight when her feet touched the ground and she whimpered in pain. He lifted her again, this time cradling her in his arms, and carried her up the porch steps. His knock brought quick footsteps, and the door opened to reveal a plump woman in her 50s, her gray hair in a neat bun, her face showing concern as she took in the scene before her. Goodness gracious, Mrs. Patterson exclaimed. Isaac Garrett, what have you brought to my door? This is Mrs. Walsh, Isaac said. She needs a room for the night and some medical attention for her feet. She's had some trouble. Mrs. Patterson's sharp eyes took in Rebecca's torn nightgown, the blood on her feet, and Isaac's coat wrapped around her shoulders. Understanding dawned immediately on her face. Bring her in, bring her in. I'll put her in the room at the end of the hall upstairs. It's the furthest from the street. Isaac carried Rebecca inside, the warmth of the house making her skin tingle painfully as feeling began to return. Mrs. Patterson led the way up the stairs, her movements quick and efficient despite her age. The room she showed them into was small but clean, with a narrow bed covered in a colorful quilt, a washstand, and a single chair by the window. Isaac set Rebecca gently on the bed, and she immediately pulled his coat tighter around herself, not wanting to let go of its warmth and the strange sense of safety it provided. Mrs. Patterson was already bustling about, lighting the lamp on the bedside table and pulling extra blankets from a chest at the foot of the bed. I'll heat some water and bring up bandages, the older woman said. Those feet need tending to right away, or they will get infected. She fixed Isaac with a stern look. You wait downstairs. I will take care of her now. Isaac nodded and turned to leave, but Rebecca found herself reaching out, catching his sleeve. Will you stay? Just downstairs, I mean, in case. She could not finish the sentence, but the fear in her voice was clear. His expression softened, and he covered her hand briefly with his own. His skin was warm, calloused from hard work, but his touch was gentle. I'll be right downstairs. He won't get past me. After Isaac left, Mrs. Patterson helped Rebecca out of her nightgown and into a warm flannel nightdress that belonged to the boarding house owner. The older woman worked in efficient silence at first, heating water and preparing bandages. As she began to carefully clean Rebecca's wounded feet, she finally spoke. That husband of yours has a reputation, Mrs. Patterson said bluntly. The men think he's fine enough, but we women see things differently. You're not the first one he's hurt, if the rumors about his last situation back in Oklahoma are true. Rebecca felt her stomach drop. His last situation. Mrs. Patterson's lips pressed into a thin line. I heard tell he had a woman before you, mail-order bride same as yourself. She died in an accident, fell down the stairs, they said, but there was talk. Nothing proven, mind you, but talk nonetheless. The water in the basin turned pink with blood as Mrs. Patterson worked. Rebecca winced at the pain but found herself more disturbed by what she had just learned. Had she been in even more danger than she realized? Would Marcus have actually killed her if Isaac had not intervened? "I don't know what to do," Rebecca whispered. "He's my husband. Legally, I have no right to leave him, and even if I tried, where would I go? I have no money of my own, no family here." "One problem at a time, dear," Mrs. Patterson said, more gently now. "Tonight you're safe. Tomorrow we'll figure out the next step. That young man downstairs seems determined to help you, and Isaac Garrett is as good as they come. If anyone can find a solution, he can." After Mrs. Patterson finished bandaging her feet and made sure Rebecca was warm and comfortable, the older woman left, promising to bring up some hot soup. Alone in the small room, Rebecca lay back against the pillows and let the tears she had been holding back finally fall. Her feet throbbed, her body ached, and her heart felt bruised and battered. But beneath the pain and fear, there was a tiny spark of something else. Hope, perhaps. Or maybe just gratitude that she was still alive. She thought of Isaac standing guard downstairs. A stranger who had stepped into her nightmare without hesitation. She wondered who he was, where he came from, what had brought him to Bandera on this particular night. Whatever the answers, she would be forever grateful that he had been there when she needed help most desperately. Downstairs, Isaac sat in the boarding house parlor, his hat on his knee, listening to the sounds of the house settling around him. Mrs. Patterson had brought him coffee and some leftover biscuits, which he accepted gratefully. His own thoughts were troubled as he replayed the scene on the street. He had seen men in his 25 years who hurt women, men who used their strength to intimidate and control. It made something dark and angry rise up in his chest, a protective fury that he usually kept carefully controlled. His own father had been a hard man, but never cruel, and had taught Isaac that real strength meant protecting those weaker than yourself, not exploiting them. Isaac had come to Bandera 2 weeks ago, taking a job at one of the ranches outside of town. He was good with horses, and the owner of the Double Creek Ranch had been happy to hire him on for the winter. Tonight, he had been riding back from visiting a friend in town when he had heard the commotion. The sight of that woman running barefoot through the snow, terror written across her face, had made his decision automatic. Now, sipping the hot coffee, he knew his involvement was far from over. Marcus Walsh would not let this go easily. Men like him never did. And Rebecca had nowhere to go, no protection under the law from a husband's abuse. The situation was thorny and complicated, and Isaac knew he should probably stay out of it. He had his own life to live, his own troubles to worry about. But when he closed his eyes, he saw Rebecca's face, pale and frightened in the lamplight. He saw her bare feet bleeding in the snow, and he knew he could not walk away, no matter how much simpler it would make his life. Mrs. Patterson came down the stairs, her expression weary. "She's settled for now, poor thing. Those feet were cut up something terrible. She won't be walking easily for several days, which might be a blessing in disguise. Gives her an excuse to stay here where it's safe." "What do you know about Marcus Walsh?" Isaac asked. The older woman settled into her rocking chair with a sigh. "Not much more than rumor and gossip, I'm afraid. He came to Bandera about 6 months ago, got the job at the lumber mill through a cousin or some such connection. Sent back east for a bride, and Rebecca arrived 3 months ago. She seemed like a sweet girl, but quiet. Too quiet, if you ask me. I saw her at the mercantile once or twice, and she had that look about her. The one women get when they're walking on eggshells, trying not to set off a man's temper." Isaac's jaw tightened, and nobody said anything. "Nobody tried to help her. It's not that simple, and you know it," Mrs. Patterson replied, though her tone held sympathy. "A man's relationship with his wife is considered his private business. Unless she dies or ends up so badly hurt that it can't be ignored, most folks look the other way." It's not right, but that's how it is. Well, I'm not looking the other way, Isaac said firmly. Mrs. Patterson studied him with keen eyes. You're taking on a lot of trouble for a woman you don't even know. Maybe, Isaac acknowledged. But I couldn't live with myself if I did nothing and something happened to her. The older woman nodded slowly. You're a good man, Isaac Garrett. Your mother raised you right. But you be careful. Marcus Walsh has friends in this town and you're still fairly new here. Make sure this doesn't cost you more than you can afford. Isaac spent the night in the boarding house parlor, dozing in one of the chairs with his gun within easy reach. Marcus did not show up, but Isaac had not really expected him to. The drunk man would need time to work up his courage again, and he would probably approach things differently in the daylight, maybe bringing the law into it, or trying to turn public opinion against Rebecca. Morning came cold and bright, the sun glinting off the fresh snow that had fallen during the night. Isaac woke stiff and sore from his night in the chair, but alert. Mrs. Patterson was already up, making breakfast in the kitchen, and the smell of bacon and coffee filled the house. How is she? Isaac asked when the boarding house owner appeared with a plate of food for him. Still sleeping, last I checked, Mrs. Patterson replied. Best thing for her. Her body needs to heal and sleep will help. Isaac ate the breakfast gratefully, his mind already working through possible solutions to Rebecca's situation. In 1883, a woman's options for leaving a bad marriage were severely limited. Divorce was scandalous and difficult to obtain, requiring proof of extreme cruelty or adultery, and even then, a woman was left with little recourse for supporting herself. Most divorced women were shunned by society, unable to find respectable work. The sound of footsteps on the stairs made him look up. Rebecca appeared in the doorway, moving carefully on her bandaged feet. Mrs. Patterson had provided her with a simple brown dress, and someone had brushed out her long auburn hair. In the morning light, Isaac could see her properly for the first time. She was lovely, with delicate features and large hazel eyes that held a wariness he suspected had not been there before her marriage. You should be resting, Mrs. Patterson scolded gently, moving to help Rebecca to a chair. I couldn't sleep anymore, Rebecca said softly. Her gaze found Isaac's. You stayed all night, seemed like the right thing to do, he replied. A flush colored her pale cheeks. I don't know how I'll ever repay your kindness, Mr. Garrett. Isaac, he corrected. And there's nothing to repay. I'm just glad I came along when I did. Mrs. Patterson set a plate of breakfast in front of Rebecca, but the young woman just stared at it, making no move to eat. What am I going to do? She asked quietly. I can't stay here forever and I can't go back to Marcus. But legally, I have no choice. The law will force me to return to him. Isaac had been thinking about this all night. Not necessarily. If we can prove he's been cruel to you, if we can get witnesses to testify, a judge might grant you a divorce. Rebecca shook her head. Who would testify? And even if they did, Marcus would never let it go. He'd come after me. You don't know him like I do. He doesn't let go of things that belong to him, and in his mind, I belong to him. The fear in her voice was palpable, and Isaac understood that this was not just anxiety but genuine terror based on experience. Marcus Walsh was dangerous, perhaps more dangerous than he had appeared last night. Then maybe you need to leave Bandra entirely, Isaac said slowly. Start over somewhere he can't find you. And how would I do that? Rebecca asked, and there was a bitter edge to her words now. I have no money, no skills to support myself. I was a school teacher back in Pennsylvania, but without references, without a husband. What school would hire me? I'd end up in the streets or worse. The bleakness in her eyes cut Isaac to the core. She was trapped, and she knew it. Society's rules and expectations had boxed her into a corner with no easy escape. Unless someone helped her, she would eventually be forced to return to Marcus, to that house where her life was at risk. A knock at the front door made all three of them freeze. Mrs. Patterson exchanged a quick glance with Isaac, who rose to his feet, his hand moving instinctively toward his gun. The boarding house owner moved to answer the door while Isaac positioned himself where he could see the entrance but also shield Rebecca if necessary. The voice that drifted in from the doorway was male but unfamiliar to Isaac. "Mrs. Patterson returned a moment later with a man in his 40s, wearing a badge on his vest. The town sheriff, Isaac realized. "Morning, folks," the sheriff said, his gaze moving from person to person before settling on Rebecca. "Mrs. Walsh, your husband came to see me this morning. He's mighty worried about you, says you ran off in the night and he wants you to come home." Rebecca's hands clenched on the table, her knuckles going white. "I'm not going back there," the sheriff sighed. "Now, madam, I understand you and your husband had some kind of disagreement, but that's between married folks. The law says a wife's place is with her husband. Even if he hurts her," Isaac asked, his voice hard. The sheriff's attention swung to him. "And who might you be, Isaac Garrett?" "I work at the Double Creek Ranch. I was the one who found Mrs. Walsh last night, running barefoot through the snow at midnight, terrified and bleeding. Her husband was chasing her in a drunken rage. Marcus says he'd had a bit to drink and they had an argument," the sheriff replied. "He admits he might have said some things he didn't mean, but he never touched her. Says she ran off before he could apologize." "That's a lie," Rebecca said, her voice shaking. "He's been hurting me for months. Last night I thought he was going to kill me. That's why I ran." The sheriff looked uncomfortable. "Now, Mrs. Walsh, those are serious accusations. Do you have any proof of this abuse?" "Look at her feet," Isaac snapped. "She ran through snow and ice barefoot because she was so scared. Does that sound like a woman who just had an argument with her husband?" "Lots of explanations for that," the sheriff said, but he did not sound convinced by his own words. "Look, I'm not here to force anyone to do anything. But Mrs. Walsh, you are legally married to Marcus. If you don't go back to him, he has the right to seek a court order compelling your return. It'll be a lot easier on everyone if you just go home and work things out." "I can't," Rebecca whispered. "Please, you don't understand. He'll kill me." "That's quite a claim," the sheriff said. "Has he threatened to kill you?" "Not in so many words, but then I'm afraid there's not much I can do. If he actually harms you, you come see me. But right now, the law is on his side." The sheriff looked genuinely sorry but also immovable. "I'll give you today to think it over. But tomorrow, I'll have to come back, and if you still refuse to return to your husband, I'll have no choice but to bring a judge into this." After the sheriff left, silence fell over the boarding house kitchen. Rebecca stared at her untouched breakfast, tears streaming down her face. Mrs. Patterson put a comforting hand on her shoulder, but there was little anyone could say. The law was clear, and it did not favor women in Rebecca's situation. Isaac felt a helpless rage building in his chest. This was wrong, fundamentally wrong, and yet there seemed to be no way around it. No legal way, at least. An idea began to form in his mind, dangerous and probably foolish, but possibly their only option. "What if you weren't married anymore?" he said slowly. Both women looked at him. "What do you mean?" Rebecca asked. "What if we could get your marriage annulled?" "Not a divorce, but an annulment, like the marriage never legally existed in the first place." Mrs. Patterson frowned. "On what grounds? Those are even harder to obtain than divorces." Isaac had been thinking about this. "Rebecca, were you and Marcus married by a proper minister with proper legal documentation?" Rebecca thought for a moment. "We were married by a justice of the peace back in Pennsylvania before we came to Texas. I signed papers, but Marcus kept them. He said he'd file them with the county clerk, but I don't know if he ever did. If those papers were never properly filed, then legally you might not be married at all, Isaac said, excitement building in his voice. Without proof of marriage, he has no legal claim on you. But he has the papers, Rebecca pointed out. He could just file them now. Not if we get to the county clerk first, Isaac replied. We could check the records. If there's no marriage certificate on file, we could file an affidavit stating that you never legally married Marcus Walsh. By the time he realizes what's happened, it'll be on record. Mrs. Patterson looked doubtful. That's a dangerous game you're suggesting. If it doesn't work, you'll have just made Marcus even angrier. It's a risk, Isaac agreed, but what other choice is there? Rebecca was quiet for a long moment, and when she finally spoke, her voice was steadier than it had been. Even if we could do that, even if we could prove I'm not legally married to him, Marcus won't just let me go. He'll come after me, I know him. He doesn't care about the law when it suits him. Then you'll need protection, Isaac said. And distance. You'll need to leave Bandera, start over somewhere far from here. I told you I have no money, nowhere to go, Rebecca said, frustration and despair mixing in her voice. Isaac made a decision then, one that would change both their lives. Come with me to the Double Creek Ranch. Mr. Henderson, the owner, is always looking for help. His wife could use assistance with the cooking and housework. It's not much, but it would be honest work and you'd be safe there. Marcus wouldn't dare come onto ranch property. I can't ask you to do that, Rebecca protested. You've already done so much, and I don't want to put you or your employer in danger. You're not asking. I'm offering, Isaac said firmly. And as for danger, I can handle Marcus Walsh if it comes to that. Rebecca's eyes filled with fresh tears, but these seemed different from before. Why are you helping me? You don't even know me. Isaac met her gaze steadily. Because it's the right thing to do, because no one deserves to live in fear. And because if I don't help you, I don't think anyone else will. He paused, then added more softly, and maybe because I know what it's like to feel trapped with no way out. I've been there in my own way. Different circumstances, but I remember that feeling of helplessness. If I can keep someone else from feeling that way, I'm going to try. Something shifted in Rebecca's expression then, a wall coming down just a little. She nodded slowly. If you really think this could work, if there's a chance I could be free of him, then yes, I'll do whatever it takes. First things first, Mrs. Patterson said, ever practical. Those feet need another day or two before you'll be able to ride or walk any distance. That gives us time to check the county records and make a plan. Isaac agreed, though every instinct told him that time was not on their side. Marcus would not wait patiently while they sorted things out, but rushing off half-prepared would be even more dangerous. They needed to be smart about this. He spent the rest of that day alternating between the boarding house and the county clerk's office. The clerk, a fussy little man named Perkins, was initially unhelpful, citing privacy concerns about looking up marriage records. But a few carefully placed coins and a story about needing to verify information for a will managed to convince him. The result was better than Isaac had dared hope. There was no record of a marriage between Marcus Walsh and Rebecca Walsh in the Bandera County records. Either Marcus had never filed the papers, or he had filed them somewhere else, and simply never bothered to transfer the records when they moved to Texas. This is it, Isaac told Rebecca when he returned to the boarding house with the news. This is your way out. Without a marriage certificate on file, you have grounds to claim the marriage isn't legal. But Rebecca looked troubled rather than relieved. Even if the law says we're not married, Marcus won't see it that way. He'll still consider me his property. She was right, of course. Legal technicalities would mean nothing to a man like Marcus Walsh. But it was a start, a tool they could use if it came down to involving the courts and the law. That night, Isaac again kept watch at the boarding house. He had sent word to his employer at the Double Creek Ranch, explaining that he had been delayed in town due to an emergency and would return as soon as possible. Mr. Henderson was an understanding man, and Isaac hoped he would also be understanding about offering Rebecca a position at the ranch. Around midnight, Isaac heard it. The sound of footsteps on the porch, slow and deliberate. Then the creak of someone testing the front door, finding it locked. Isaac rose from his chair, gun in hand, and moved silently to the window. In the moonlight reflecting off the snow, he could see Marcus Walsh standing on the porch, peering through the windows. For a long moment, Marcus just stood there, and Isaac could feel the malevolence radiating from the man even through the glass. Then, Marcus's gaze found Isaac standing in the darkened parlor, and their eyes met. Even across that distance, Isaac could see the rage and hatred in the other man's face. Marcus raised his hand and pointed at Isaac, a clear gesture of threat. Then he turned and walked away, his footsteps crunching in the snow. Isaac watched until he was out of sight, his heart pounding. That had been a promise, not a threat. Marcus was telling him that this was not over, that there would be a reckoning. Isaac checked the locks on all the doors and windows, then returned to his chair, knowing sleep would not come easily now. He had made himself a target by protecting Rebecca, and Marcus was the kind of man who would not forget or forgive that interference. But Isaac did not regret his actions. Looking up at the ceiling, knowing Rebecca was safe upstairs, he felt a sense of rightness about what he was doing. The next morning brought fresh challenges. The sheriff returned, this time with Marcus in tow. The lumber mill worker looked haggard, with dark circles under his eyes, but he had cleaned himself up and presented a picture of a concerned husband worried about his missing wife. Mrs. Walsh, the sheriff said when Rebecca came downstairs, leaning heavily on Mrs. Patterson for support. "Your husband is here to take you home." "I'm not going," Rebecca said, and Isaac was proud of the strength in her voice. Marcus stepped forward, his expression carefully crafted to show hurt and confusion. "Rebecca, honey, what's all this about? I know I had too much to drink the other night and I said some things I shouldn't have. I'm sorry for that, but we can work this out at home. You don't need to involve all these people in our private business." "You chased me through the snow in the middle of winter," Rebecca replied. "You've been hurting me for months. I'm not coming back to you, Marcus." "Now, don't be dramatic," Marcus said, and there was an edge creeping into his voice despite his attempt to sound reasonable. "I never hurt you. We had arguments, sure, but what married couple doesn't? You're blowing this all out of proportion." "There's also the matter of your marriage certificate," Isaac interjected. "Or rather, the lack of one." Marcus's head swiveled toward him. "What are you talking about?" "I checked with the county clerk," Isaac said calmly. "There's no record of a marriage between you and Rebecca. Without legal documentation, you have no claim on her." The mask of reasonableness slipped from Marcus's face. "That's ridiculous. We were married in Pennsylvania. I have the certificate." "Then you should have filed it here when you established residency in Texas," Isaac replied. "But you didn't. Which means, according to Texas law, there's no legal marriage." The sheriff looked between them, clearly uncomfortable with this new development. "Is this true, Walsh? Did you file your marriage certificate?" Marcus's jaw clenched. "I don't have to explain myself to you or anyone else. Rebecca is my wife, and she's coming home with me. Actually, without proof of marriage, I can't compel her to go with you," the sheriff said slowly. "This is getting complicated. We might need to bring a judge in to sort it out." "I'm not waiting for a judge," Marcus snarled, abandoning all pretense of civility. "Rebecca, you're coming with me right now." He lunged forward, reaching for Rebecca's arm. Isaac moved quickly, putting himself between them once again. "Step back, Walsh." "You," Marcus spat, his face twisted with rage. "This is all your fault. You think you're some kind of hero stealing another man's wife." "I think I'm someone who won't stand by and watch a woman get hurt," Isaac replied evenly. "That's enough," the sheriff said, his hand moving to his own gun. "Walsh, back off. This situation isn't going to be resolved with violence. We'll bring it before Judge Morrison next week and he can sort out the legal details." Marcus looked like he wanted to argue, but the presence of the sheriff's gun made him think better of it. "Fine," he bit out. "Let the judge decide. But Rebecca, you remember this. You're mine and you'll always be mine. No piece of paper or lack of one is going to change that." The threat was clear and Rebecca went pale, but she lifted her chin and met Marcus's gaze. "I would rather die than go back to you." Something dark and terrible flashed in Marcus's eyes. "That can be arranged." "Walsh," the sheriff barked. "I heard that. You just threatened her life in front of a lawman. I'd be careful about what you say next." Marcus seemed to realize he had gone too far. He took a step back, raising his hands in a gesture of surrender. "I didn't mean anything by it. I'm just upset. Any man would be, having his wife stolen from him." "Nobody's stealing anyone," the sheriff said tiredly. "Now go on home. I'll send word when the judge is ready to see all of you." After Marcus and the sheriff left, the boarding house felt oppressively quiet. Rebecca sank into a chair, shaking. "Did you hear him? He threatened to kill me and even the sheriff couldn't do anything about it." "The sheriff heard it," Isaac pointed out. "That's actually good for us. It supports your claim that Marcus is dangerous. It also means he's past the point of caring who knows what he's capable of," Mrs. Patterson said grimly. "That makes him even more dangerous. Rebecca, dear, I think Isaac's right. You need to leave Bandera as soon as you're able to travel." Over the next 2 days, they prepared for Rebecca's departure. Mrs. Patterson provided her with practical clothing suitable for ranch work, including a split riding skirt, sturdy boots that fit over her bandaged feet, and a warm coat. Isaac made arrangements with Mr. Henderson at the Double Creek Ranch, sending a detailed letter explaining the situation and asking if Rebecca could be offered work and protection there. Mr. Henderson's response came back surprisingly quickly, delivered by one of the ranch hands who happened to be in town. The rancher agreed to take Rebecca on as help for his wife, and he assured Isaac that the ranch would stand behind anyone under their protection. It was more than Isaac had hoped for, and he felt genuine gratitude toward his employer. On the 3rd day after the confrontation in the snow, Rebecca's feet had healed enough for her to walk carefully, though they were still tender. Isaac judged it was time to go. They had received word that Judge Morrison would not be arriving in Bandera for another week, which gave them a window of opportunity to get Rebecca safely to the ranch before any legal proceedings could force her return to Marcus. They left early in the morning, before most of the town was awake. Isaac had purchased a gentle mare for Rebecca to ride, using most of his saved wages but considering it money well spent. Mrs. Patterson packed them food for the journey and hugged Rebecca tightly before they left. "You be strong, child," the older woman whispered. "And you, Isaac Garrett, you take care of her." "I will," Isaac promised. The ride to the Double Creek Ranch would take most of the day. The ranch was about 15 miles outside of Bandera, far enough to provide some safety from Marcus, but still within reach of town when needed. They rode in silence for the first hour, both of them alert for any sign of pursuit. It was Rebecca who finally broke the silence. "Isaac, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why did you really help me? And please don't just say it was the right thing to do." "I believe that's part of it, but there's something else. I can see it in your eyes sometimes, like you understand what I'm going through in a way most people wouldn't." Isaac was quiet for a moment, debating how much to share, but something about Rebecca made him want to be honest with her. Maybe it was the vulnerability she had shown, or the strength she had displayed despite her fear. Maybe it was the growing feeling in his chest every time he looked at her, a feeling he was not quite ready to name. "My mother," he said finally. "My father wasn't a bad man, not like Marcus. But he had a temper, and when he drank, sometimes he'd get rough. My mother would try to protect my sister and me, and she'd take the brunt of his anger. I was young, too young to really stop him, but I remember feeling so helpless, watching her suffer and not being able to do anything about it." "I'm sorry," Rebecca said softly. "She died when I was 16, Isaac continued. "Fever took her, but I always wondered if all those years of stress and hurt had worn her down, made her vulnerable. After she passed, my father sobered up, realized what he'd done. He never raised a hand in anger again, but it was too late. She was gone." He paused, old pain evident in his voice. "I swore then that if I ever had the chance to help someone in a similar situation, I would. I wouldn't stand by and do nothing, not ever again." "That's why you didn't hesitate," Rebecca said. "When you saw me running." "I saw my mother in you," Isaac admitted, "and I couldn't let history repeat itself, not when I had the power to stop it." They rode in contemplative silence after that, but something had shifted between them. A connection had been forged, based on shared understanding and mutual respect. Rebecca found herself studying Isaac as they traveled, noticing things she had been too frightened and exhausted to see before. The way he sat his horse with easy confidence. The kindness in his dark eyes when he looked at her. The strength in his hands and the gentleness in his touch when he helped her mount and dismount. She was attracted to him, she realized with some surprise. After months of Marcus's cruelty, she had thought herself incapable of feeling anything positive toward a man. But Isaac was different. He made her feel safe but not trapped, protected but not controlled. He asked rather than demanded, suggested rather than commanded. It was a revelation to her that relationships between men and women could be based on mutual respect rather than domination and fear. They stopped around midday to rest the horses and eat some of the food Mrs. Patterson had packed. Sitting on a fallen log, watching the horses graze nearby, Rebecca found herself speaking thoughts she had not meant to voice. "I feel like I'm waking up from a nightmare," she said. "These past few days with you, seeing how you treat me, how you treat everyone really. It's shown me that what I had with Marcus wasn't normal. I knew it was bad, but I think part of me had started to believe that was just how marriage was supposed to be." "It's not," Isaac said firmly. "Marriage should be a partnership, built on love and respect. What Marcus did to you, that wasn't love. That was control and abuse." "I know that now," Rebecca replied. "But before I met him, I didn't have much experience with men or relationships. My parents died when I was young, and I was raised by my aunt, who was very strict. When Marcus's advertisement for a mail-order bride promised a fresh start, adventure, and a family of my own, it seemed like an answer to my prayers." She laughed bitterly. "I was so naive." "You were hopeful," Isaac corrected. "There's nothing wrong with that. Marcus is the one who lied and manipulated you. None of this is your fault." Rebecca felt tears prick her eyes at his words. She had blamed herself so much over the past months, wondering what she had done to make Marcus so angry, how she could fix herself to make him happy. Hearing Isaac definitively state that it was not her fault lifted a weight she had not fully realized she was carrying. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Isaac reached over and gently squeezed her hand. The touch sent a warm spark through her, and when his eyes met hers, she saw something there that made her breath catch. But the moment passed quickly as Isaac stood, helping her to her feet. "We should keep moving," he said. "Want to reach the ranch before dark." The Double Creek Ranch came into view as the sun was beginning to set. painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The main house was a sprawling single-story structure built of stone and timber, with smoke curling from 2 chimneys. Several outbuildings surrounded it, including a large barn, a bunkhouse for the ranch hands, and what looked like a workshop. Cattle grazed in the distance, and Rebecca could see several horses in a corral near the barn. A man emerged from the house as they approached, tall and weathered with gray hair and a kind face. This was Mr. Henderson, the ranch owner, and he greeted them warmly. "Isaac, good to have you back. And this must be Mrs. Walsh," he said, tipping his hat to Rebecca. "Welcome to the Double Creek. My wife Martha is inside, eager to meet you." Martha Henderson proved to be as welcoming as her husband, a woman in her 50s with a warm smile and shrewd eyes that assessed Rebecca quickly but not unkindly. She showed Rebecca to a small but comfortable room off the kitchen, explaining that this would be her quarters while she worked at the ranch. "You'll help me with the cooking and cleaning and some of the garden work come spring," Martha explained. "It's honest work, and we'll pay you fair wages. More importantly, you'll be safe here. My husband and I understand your situation, and we won't let anyone harm you under our roof." Rebecca felt tears of gratitude threatening again. "Thank you, Mrs. Henderson. I can't tell you what this means to me. Call me Martha, dear. We're not formal folk around here." The older woman patted Rebecca's hand. "Now, you get yourself settled in. Dinner will be ready in about an hour, and you'll eat with us. We're one big family here at the Double Creek, and that includes you now." That first dinner at the ranch was one of the most pleasant meals Rebecca could remember in months. The long table in the ranch house dining room was crowded with Mr. and Mrs. Henderson, Isaac, and 4 other ranch hands who worked the property. The conversation was lively but never cruel, with much good-natured teasing and laughter. No one mentioned Marcus or the situation that had brought Rebecca to the ranch, for which she was grateful. She noticed how easily Isaac fit in with this group, how the other men respected him, and how the Hendersons treated him almost like a son. She noticed, too, how his eyes kept finding hers across the table, how he smiled when their gazes met. Her heart did a strange little flutter each time, and she found herself smiling back. Over the following days, Rebecca settled into a routine at the ranch. She worked alongside Martha, learning the rhythms of ranch life. The work was hard but satisfying in a way her life with Marcus had never been. Here, her efforts were appreciated and acknowledged. When she baked bread that turned out particularly well, Martha praised her. When she mastered a new recipe or finished a difficult task, Mr. Henderson thanked her genuinely. And there was Isaac, always nearby but never hovering. He would find excuses to stop by the house during the day, ostensibly to get water or deliver messages from Mr. Henderson. But Rebecca noticed how his visits always seemed to coincide with times when she might be taking a break from her work. They would talk, cautious conversations at first but gradually deepening, as they grew more comfortable with each other. Isaac told her about his life before coming to the Double Creek, about growing up in southern Texas, about learning to work with horses from his father after the old man sobered up, about his sister who had married a farmer and moved to California. Rebecca shared her own stories, about her childhood in Pennsylvania, about her love of teaching and how she hoped someday to work with children again, about her dreams that had been put on hold but not extinguished. One evening, about 2 weeks after Rebecca's arrival at the ranch, Isaac found her sitting on the porch after dinner, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. He settled onto the step beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth from his body in the cool evening air. "How are you really doing?" he asked quietly. Rebecca considered the question carefully. "Better than I was, safer. But also scared, if I'm honest. I keep waiting for Marcus to show up to find me here. He won't get past us, Isaac said with quiet certainty. And Mr. Henderson sent word to the sheriff about where you are. If Marcus tries anything, the law will know exactly who to look at. The law didn't help me much before, Rebecca pointed out. Fair enough, Isaac acknowledged. But things are different now. You have people on your side, people who will stand with you. You're not alone anymore. Rebecca turned to look at him, struck by the intensity in his voice. In the fading light, his face was half in shadow, but she could see the determination there, the protectiveness. Something warm unfurled in her chest, a feeling she was beginning to recognize as more than just gratitude. Isaac, she said softly, what happens after? Even if Marcus can't force me back, even if the judge rules in my favor, what kind of life can I have? I'll always be the woman who ran away from her husband. In most people's eyes, that makes me damaged goods. In most people's eyes, maybe, Isaac replied. But not in mine. In my eyes, you're one of the bravest people I've ever met. You risked everything to save yourself. That takes courage most people don't have. The way he was looking at her made Rebecca's heart race. She saw something in his expression that she had not dared to hope for, something that looked very much like the feelings beginning to grow in her own heart. Isaac, she began, but was interrupted by the sound of hoofbeats approaching fast. Both of them stood quickly, tension immediately replacing the soft moment they had been sharing. One of the ranch hands came riding up to the house, his horse lathered with sweat. Isaac, Mr. Henderson. The man called out, You better come quick. There's a group of men from town riding this way and Marcus Walsh is leading them. Isaac's face went hard. How many? 5 or 6 at least, the ranch hand replied. They're armed and they look like they mean business. Mr. Henderson emerged from the house, having heard the commotion. Martha, take Rebecca inside and stay away from the windows, he ordered. Then to his men, get everyone together. If Walsh wants trouble, he'll find we're ready for it. Rebecca's blood ran cold. This was what she had feared, Marcus coming for her with violence. I should leave, she said quickly. I should go before anyone gets hurt because of me. You're not going anywhere, Isaac said firmly, taking her by the shoulders and looking into her eyes. You run now and you'll be running forever. This ends here tonight. But I don't want anyone to die for me, Rebecca protested, tears streaming down her face. No one's going to die, Isaac said, though his voice held more conviction than certainty. But we're not handing you over to him. That's not happening. Martha Henderson took Rebecca's arm and gently but firmly led her into the house. Through the window, Rebecca watched as Isaac and the other ranch hands gathered in front of the house, a line of defense between her and whatever was coming. She saw Isaac check his gun, saw the set of his jaw, and terror gripped her heart. Not for herself, but for him. If something happened to Isaac because of her, she would never forgive herself. The wait seemed to last forever, though it was probably only 10 minutes before the riders appeared, their forms silhouetted against the last light of dusk. Marcus was indeed at the front, and Rebecca recognized a few of the men with him as workers from the lumber mill. They pulled up about 20 yards from the house, a standoff forming in the dusty yard. Henderson, Marcus called out, send out my wife. This is between her and me. No need for anyone else to get involved. I'm afraid I can't do that, Walsh, Mr. Henderson replied calmly. Mrs. Walsh is under my protection, and she's made it clear she doesn't want to go with you. She's my wife. She doesn't have a choice, Marcus snarled. Actually, the law's not so clear on that, Isaac interjected. Seeing as how you never properly filed your marriage certificate and all. Marcus's attention focused on Isaac with laser intensity. I should have put a bullet in you that first night, sticking your nose where it doesn't belong. Funny, I was thinking the same thing about you, Isaac replied. Rebecca doesn't belong to you. She's not property. She's mine, Marcus insisted, and there was something unhinged in his voice now. I paid good money to bring her out here. I have rights. You have no rights to abuse another human being, Mr. Henderson said firmly. Now, I'm giving you and your friends one chance to turn around and ride back to town before this gets ugly. One of the men with Marcus shifted nervously. Marcus, maybe we should. Shut up, Marcus snapped. He was staring at the house now, and Rebecca realized with horror that he could see her in the window. Their eyes met across the distance, and she saw the madness there, the obsession. This was not about love or even about ownership anymore. This was about control, about winning, about refusing to let go. Rebecca, Marcus shouted, you come out here right now or people are going to get hurt. Is that what you want? Blood on your hands. Inside the house, Rebecca felt her resolve waver. He was right in a way. If there was violence tonight, it would be because of her. But then she remembered Isaac's words. If she gave in now, she would be running forever. And more than that, she would be teaching Marcus that threats and violence worked, that he could get whatever he wanted through intimidation. She moved to the door, ignoring Martha's protests, and stepped out onto the porch. Isaac immediately moved toward her, positioning himself between her and Marcus, but she placed a hand on his arm. I can speak for myself, she said quietly, then raised her voice to carry across the yard. Marcus, I'm not coming with you. Not tonight, not ever. What we